Welcome back to the second installment of our visual recap series. This is where we've changed our format a bit, and now instead of just recapping by showing the same log entries, we actually go day by day, in this case 30 days in 31 minutes, showing the actual log graphs that were recorded for those days and the consumption and power supply by the system on a day-by-day basis. If you want to see any specific day, just go back and go to the corresponding minute of that video, and then that day will show up. And so we'll start here with what we've got on the first, and it's a nice sunny day, good production. We've got some usage in the evening. It looks like AC. We were showing some decent temperatures that night, and again, you know, the this shows that whole thing about the evenings being warm, and then you can see that on the very beginning of the day on the first, we just ran short. We actually had to, we started pulling some power from the grid. That's that gray area that's just kind of going away now. And then obviously that goes away right when you see the solar contribution start. But other than that typical day, you can see again later in the day you've got that high AC usage drawing off of the battery. And then on the second also, we ran out just before we got to first contribution. Took 3.9 kilowatts from the grid that day. And again, a lot of AC use on the second. And then the circulating fans, that's that bump early in the morning of the third that you see there. And so then also, I forgot, on the second we had two vehicles charging that day. You can see that first bump there was from my friend's Bolt, and then the second one that goes higher to 15 kilowatts, that's my vehicle. And it was that double charge that made us kind of come up just a little short, as you can see there on the third. But the third was a good day of production. And now I had to do some out-of-town driving, so I actually wound up supercharging the car because I was, again, operating away from home. And so that's why for the next few days you won't actually see any vehicle charge to the system. That gives it an opportunity to recover as well. And so again, the third and the fourth, they look almost identical. You can see there's some cloud cover there that had come through on the fourth, and those bumps, those are from AC use. And the AC use, you can see in the evening there, was fairly extensive, and that's because it just got so muggy. There was no breeze or anything to, you know, opening the windows was of zero use. And so then you see those large blocks that are roughly 2.5, 3 kilowatts in height. Those are actually the circulating fans, and those come on because the windows are closed and the house is trying to circulate the air that's in there to keep the upstairs and the downstairs at equal temperatures. And again, on the fourth, you can see, or excuse me, the fifth, you can see there that notching that is indicative of a rainy day. 32.3 kilowatt hours consumed by the home, 49 produced. So we're still actually producing a decent amount, but that notching is from the cloud cover. And then again, you can see some hits there, short hits from the AC use. And again, in the evening, but we've got some cooler temperatures forecast for the next few days. And at this point, the system was ending the day around, ending the day at 64% charge on the 5th, and then on the 6th it ended the day at 51.8 following a charge. You can see that charge occurring there in the evening. That's that 15 kilowatt block, and then you can see the broader block there on the 7th, where we are returning the car to full operation. And that block there that you see, that's 34 kilowatt hours that went to the vehicle. That brought its charge up to 130 miles, 140 miles, something like that. And then on the 8th, much the same, a little bit better production. Took another 34 kilowatt hour slug to the car. The system charge was 33% after we finished with the charge to the car, and then we let it finish out its total solar day there. And then on the 9th, as you can see, we put a charge of 15 kilowatt hours to the vehicle in the morning. Good production for the day, 49.4 kilowatt hours. And even with the vehicle charging for that day, we still, our usage was 35.7. So pretty typical day for this time of year. As you can see, the 10th looks much the same. 18 kilowatt hours to the vehicle in the morning, basically covering for the driving that was done the previous day. And a little bit of AC use there in the evening of the 10th. And on the 11th, we have much the same. This one was 7 kilowatt hours to the car. We didn't do as much driving, so we didn't have to cover as much. And again, this is where you start to get into that benefit of that late September kind of weather, where everything's cooling down. As you can see now, there's very little AC use now this time of year. You can see on the 11th we only have that one little hit there, and so that brought the home usage, if you were to strip out just what the home used that day, was 22.3, and then obviously that 7 kilowatts to the car, and ending the total draw at 29.3. And the 12th is much the same, but we're prepping for a out-of-town trip, so we're trying to get the car charge at a higher state. So we wound up putting 20 kilowatt hours in the morning to the car that day. That's that morning spike. And then a little warmer that day, we wind up seeing those 3 hits in the evening from the AC. And on the 13th, we had that had a return trip there from the Bay Area, and so then as you can see, I returned home shortly after noon, and then the very first thing that that you do after completely depleting the car, you don't want to leave it set with no charge, and so immediately there you see 18 kilowatt hours was put to the car. And the evening was a little warm and still that day. You can tell, obviously, that's our AC use hitting there, along with some cooking that was done there, apparently. Now the 14th was an interesting day. I wound up going out with some friends, and you know, that's kind of thing. This is how life works. You know, I was intending to obviously charge the car off of sunlight, but wound up happening as I returned from the Bay Area on the 14th. A friend of mine decided that they wanted to do some wine tasting, and so I immediately had to turn around and use the vehicle. And so on the 14th, I actually did wind up supercharging the car, and you'll see that reflected in the next few days, where I wind up depleting those supercharger miles instead of charging at home. Then the 15th, you can see that notching there. Again, we had early morning cloud cover and rain. Not a lot of rain, but it was enough to record there. But what it also did was, because of the elevated temperatures, it did make it a little bit muggy. So we had just a little bit of AC use there, but temperatures subsided in the evening, and we were able to open the windows, and so you can see, you know, quite a difference there between what you see on the 14th and the 15th. The difference between being able to open the windows to cool the house and not makes quite a difference in the overall use for the home. If we stripped out everything, just the home use for the 14th, the home used 48.7 kilowatt hours, and again, that's not counting the vehicle charging. And then on the 15th, there it goes down to 18.8 kilowatt hours of use. So quite a difference. The 15th was interesting too, because of all that AC use the previous day. We just barely made it to morning with 3% on the in the system, but we made it. And the 16th, again, rainy day. Most of the rain occurring in the morning. Still managed 40.9 kilowatt hours of production, so that was good. Little AC hit in the evening, you can see there. And again, no charge to the car. We're still burning off those supercharger miles. The 17th was the last day for that. And we wound up giving us an opportunity to get the system back up a bit in charge. We're closing the day on the 17th at 96% of charge in the system, so that was good. And then obviously, following a depletion of that supercharger miles, obviously now I need to charge the car. And so on the 18th, you can see a massive 47 kilowatt hours being put to the vehicle. Now I also wound up putting the home on zombie apocalypse mode on the 18th as well. I was helping Lee with some numbers, examining some oddities of having the system at a high charge rate. We'll do a separate video on that where we talk a little bit about some of the frequency response issues that we were seeing when the system transitions over. I don't know whether that's a software change that Tesla had made, but we'll dive into that a little closer. But anyway, the takeaway here is that the system was then put on zombie apocalypse mode, and so that changes. You'll see now those to and from grid numbers. They always kind of show us, that kind of 0.2 to 0.4 range on both of those. But as you'll notice, when you do go into zombie apocalypse mode, both of those obviously are 0. It's forcing all of its power to come from the power walls, because it's got no in and out to the grid at all. And so that's one way to tell by looking at these graphs that you're in zombie apocalypse mode. And on the 19th, you can see there we have a 10 kilowatt hour vehicle charge around 3 or so in the afternoon. We ended the total solar day at 47%, 48%. And then early morning the next day, I knew I was going to need to do some driving, so I actually programmed the car to start charging. And so on the 20th, you can see there that's a 12 kilowatt hour hit in the morning. Sunny day, minimal AC use. Temperatures were pretty cool. Just that one kind of hit late in the day to kind of even things out. Knock the interior temperature down a little bit. And then on the 21st, much the same. I programmed the car to charge a little bit early in the morning. And so that's a 8 kilowatt hour charge that you see in the morning, and then I put a second charge of 10 kilowatt hours in the evening. So that's why you've got those two spikes there. And then that third little hit there, that's the air conditioning coming on in the evening briefly. Then on the 22nd, everything kind of goes pear-shaped a little bit here. So, lot going on here. We had some cloudy weather. This was when we had storm watch come available to us, and I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity. I'll go home and I'll put the home on storm watch. And so then what I did was, because the home was on zombie apocalypse mode, that storm watch will only charge the home if you come off of zombie apocalypse mode. So I dutifully did that, and I also wanted to see the state of charge, how quickly it would charge the system up from a depleted state. And so what did I do? Well, as you can see, I depleted the system. I put 46 kilowatt hours into the car, and then I turned the grid power on, and everything dropped out. The batteries dropped out completely. And so then you'll see that gray appear there. That's the home as it uses grid power to run. The batteries were out of commission. And again, if you've seen that previous video, what wound up happening there is that one of the wires to the communications bus on the plug on the gateway, the way we have it routed, our emergency cutoff on the outside, the gateway's communications bus is routed through there, and one of the wires, the solder connection, came loose. And so, as you can see here, now the home for the next several days, the home actually reverts to what it would be if we had no batteries at all. And so you can see now, again, we talked about that duck curve and why the utility companies were complaining about what happens there, because all of that gray area, that's power going to the grid. 35.6 kilowatt hours to the grid that day, 28.4 on the 24th, and then another 24.7 kilowatt hours to the grid on the 25th. And so that's what your system looks like when you don't have batteries. And we wound up finishing actually the entire remainder of the month in this mode. And so it gives us an interesting opportunity to kind of see how that differs from how the system operates when it has battery power to draw from. And again, some hot, muggy days there. You can see we're having some decent AC use. And at this point, I was actually still hopeful that we'd get the system back online, so I haven't been doing any vehicle charging during the day, but near the tail end here, you'll see that changes. And again, in and out. You can see there, now we've got nothing going in and out to the power wall. So we have to utilize the grid. And it's a good opportunity to see that the grid does operate quite well as a backup. And so it's nice to have it there. We're not out in the forest somewhere, and so that's fortunate. And so then here's the other interesting thing this month. On the 26th, you'll notice that there is some data missing there. And what happened there was that Tesla actually wound up doing some maintenance on the system on their end in their database. And there is no data available for that period. There's no, apparently at Tesla, there's no secondary way to store that data to repopulate it later, so that data is just gone. And so on this particular day, what I wound up doing was getting the data for our solar production from the SolarEdge inverter. It actually records all of that information separately, the start and stop times. And so on the 27th there, Tesla is showing 29 kilowatt hours of production, and the SolarEdge number was actually 30.51. So Tesla missed out a little bit there in the morning. But as you can see, our biggest issue is that we've got no way to store the power. And so now you'll see the that block there appearing now on the 28th, where there was all that use in the morning. Now that represents a trickle charge that I had to put in the car. Had no battery power to draw from, and I didn't want the spike to be huge on the grid. And so instead of taking one large slug off of the grid, I did that to keep our peak down. And that's just a way of me showing that under normal running that you don't actually ever really exceed 10 kilowatts of draw from the from grid power at any point during the year, under normal use. There's a couple times where I put the system through a test, and when we do the closeout and the first week of October, you'll see that I actually do a full-blown test of the storm watch. And on that, I did want to see what the worst case scenario was, and so I wound up charging the car while the storm watch was simultaneously charging the batteries. And so that was an interesting test, but I'll keep you in a bit of suspense for that until the next video. The 27th and 28th are pretty cloudy days, rainy. Some cloud cover came in also late on the 29th, you can see there. And on the 29th, no choice. I did actually wind up taking a slug off of the grid to charge the car. Needed the car for a decent trip that day, and that's me replenishing it, because I'm going to need it again tomorrow. So and then we end our visual September on the 30th. Again, a partly cloudy day. Still in that maintenance mode. We didn't actually wind up bringing the system back online until I believe it was the 2nd or 3rd of October. And then I'll let this run out just another couple of minutes so that the video lines up with our format. Again, the format we try to run with is this month is 30 days and 31 minutes. So we do that little intro in the beginning. We'll go ahead and let this run out a little bit here so that everything lines up. Again, this is designed as an archive, and so you should be able to go back to any of the closeout videos and then go to the corresponding minute of that video and then see the day that corresponds to that minute. In this case, the month was done, the video was done 30 days and 31 minutes. And so that way, that accounts for that 1 minute lead in, and then each day occurs on that minute. And so to keep with that format, that archival format, we'll go ahead and let this play out. But that's basically September. Ended with that kind of strangeness. It won't be until, like I said, until October the 2nd or 3rd when we actually do wind up getting the system back online. And then that brings this closeout for the month of September to an end. Thank you again for joining us. And as I said, if you go back into any of the other archive closeouts, instead of seeing this graph, you'll see the actual log entries. And eventually I'll go through all of these months and put in the graphs now that Tesla allows us to actually go through and see the graphs for any day, including the first of the year when we started off. And so eventually I'll populate it out and upload all of those as well, just so that if you have any interest in going back and seeing what any particular day looked like for our system is in comparison to what your system produced, you're able to do that. And again, thank you very much for joining us. If this is a kind of geeky thing that interests you, feel free to like and subscribe, and we will see you very soon with our closeout for our first week in October.